Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm here with someone, I guess, really at the core of this movement of awakening and love and consciousness. And Matt Kahn, the last time I'll never forget the line you said that still sticks with me, that you're working with one I love you at a time. And
that's right.
And I said, what does that mean? It took me what one I love you at a time. And then I got it. And then and I felt like, you're can you talk about that quality that you have to transmit that love? I mean, where's it come from? Yeah, talk about that, because it's something we're all trying to find, or most of us are still trying to find. Yeah.
Well, and thank you again for having me on your show. I mean, it's always an honor to be with you and everyone that's joining us. I, throughout my life, through various awakening experiences, have come to realize not only like many of us, we're empathic beings, right? We don't know where our experiences begin and someone else's experience ends. I always thought that people's feelings were their perception of me. So I spent most of my life trying to cheer people up. And when I realized that I had an empathic ability to tune into people's bodies, using my body as like a divining rod to feel into their experience, and when I realized that included the ability to channel heart-centered healing energy through the sound of my voice and through my presence to help people heal, it was quite a revelation, and you go from being feeling like you're a misunderstood, almost invisible character in the world to discovering a purpose that, it's such an honor to serve the evolution of mankind, the ascension of humanity. And really, it's quite an honor to demonstrate these abilities, so to awaken these and even greater abilities in other beings, because we all deserve to know how truly powerful we are.
Right. But that just doesn't happen by, I think, my limited opinion, just saying, I want to do this love. Something happened to you.
Oh, yeah.
You were activated, you were turned on.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk a little bit? And then,
of course.
Yeah. What did you do with it? But talk about your story about that activation.
Well, when I was 8, I had an out-of-body experience. I met Jesus and I didn't really know who this being was. The love was so intense. And all of my big experiences have always come with this intense love that is greater than the love that I felt from my family, even though my family are very loving people. It was greater than a love I've ever known. It was greater than any love I've ever felt in my life. And so when I've gone through these experiences and you're touched by a love that is that powerful, it literally changes the molecules of your body. It literally changes the molecular structure of your being. It changes your personality. It changes your values. And it literally makes your personal conduct in response to other people the most important thing to focus on, and not in a fear-based, make it or break it type of way. But you start to see through the eyes of your heart, and you start to be able to feel that all of people's behavior is either coming from the depth of the revolution or how much pain they're still consumed in. And sometimes as empaths, we feel people's pain deeper than they do. And so the beauty of spiritual evolution, even though a lot of it gets caught up in self-help and working on ourselves, is truly to free ourselves of the conditions we absorbed and inherited early in our lives, and to really free ourselves to be able to safe enough to give and receive love as if everyone is a member of our family. And so these experiences I can talk about, for me, the importance is not the wisdom I've realized, the oneness that lives within me, which is beautiful. For me, what's important is how much of a loving being did I become as a result of these shifts? And it changed everything about who I was every time.
But I don't know if you want to talk about, but there was suffering involved. It wasn't.
Oh, yes.
Is that part of it? Is that necessary, or is that something we are holding on in the past?
I think we have to kind of define what suffering is, because there's pain. And I think a lot of people experience the presence of pain as the existence of suffering. But I think the difference is pain is always the visceral sensation that healing is occurring. So if I'm in pain, there is literally an intense amount of transmutation where cellular memories are literally being exploded and returned back to higher vibrations of light. So pain is healing in progress. Suffering is actually different. Suffering is the blame we project or impose onto ourselves as a result of the pain we're in. So suffering are the ways in which we try to minimize pain and defend against it. And we find that the more in resistance we tend to be with pain, the more we tend to suffer, the more we blame others, the more we judge ourselves for a variety of reasons. But I think that the most important thing is to separate pain from suffering. I have experienced suffering. I have experienced pain. Nowadays, I have an incredible relationship with pain and I don't suffer. But I would be remiss into saying that my journey included both extraordinary otherworldly phenomenon and an incredible, overwhelming, insurmountable level of pain, exhaustion, and suffering, which for me, as it kept reoccurring in my journey, gave me a chance to look deeper into the experience, which at a certain point was a choice I began to make. How can I see what is trying to be revealed instead of using it to cause undue suffering unto myself and others?
That's a key moment for a lot of people. So they're in a relationship that doesn't work out or something,
Right.
and they mourn for that. They long for they impose suffering on themselves.
Right.
The other choice is to see, well, what did I learn from this? And
Right.
how did, I mean, it can't say how did it benefit me if someone's still in pain or about that or suffering about it. Pain is suffering is a choice, I suppose. But how do you do that inner somersault to say, wow, that was an experience, and
Right.
thank you.
Well, I think the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we feeling? What am I feeling right now? I think the first thing we need to do is to define what we're actually feeling, because in the way I like to teach, the feeling itself, when not associated with what person, place, or thing we think has caused it, is an opportunity to deepen our relationship with unconditional love, to embrace the feeling like a child in pain. So I think the difference is, how do we deal with life when we associate our feelings to the experiences that reintroduce them into our awareness? And if we can separate those two things, how we work with our feelings at, one I love you at a time, as a chance to love ourselves unconditionally, that becomes a different journey versus how am I going to deal with my self-imposed association that links my feeling to this event, which then defines my experience as someone disempowered me. Now, of course, that could be the first awareness that I feel disempowered by this unexpected change. I thought I was in a relationship, then I walked in the front door, they're sleeping with someone else. Wow, I didn't know we're exes. You know what I mean? Like, surprise, surprise. And we all deal with that differently. But what I think is interesting, and I think this is very helpful, a point to make, is that when we separate our pain from suffering, it's not because we find the right people in our lives to trust, although, of course, that's equally important. We've actually developed such an unconditionally loving relationship with ourselves that we trust ourselves enough that I'm going to love full on. This could last the test of time. It's certainly going to end at a certain point, whether the way I want it to or not. But can I trust myself enough as a loving being to love fully, to know that change is the only inevitability, and to allow myself to know whatever I need to heal from this, I can move myself through it. And when we arrive at that place, what I've discovered in my own experience is that you can love so deeply. And again, I would never say this unless I've experienced it. You can love so deeply that even when it ends, the love was so pure that it leaves you in a place of gratitude with no grief to process. I often sometimes think that grief is just how we love when we view ourselves and others as objects. And as we love truly from an unconditional place, it's the ability to love that cleanses us. And although we might be heartbroken and confused by turn of events, we're able to move ourselves through it because we know the feeling is only associated to the outcome as a way of introducing what's next in line to be loved.
No, I like that. And what you're saying actually reminds me of experiences I've had of people who've passed over, relatives. It's like,
yeah,
it was such an overwhelming feeling of love and appreciation for that person that the grief was there, I suppose, but it shows up as pure unconditional love.
yes.
And so I haven't had that in relationships so much, but
right. Well, and I would say to add to that is that when, and I've experienced both sides of this, is that when we love truly unconditionally, even when someone comes into our life and leaves, like a relationship, when we love unconditionally, we are aware that whether it ends poorly or not, this person has helped to introduce a greater aspect of myself into my life. And if I'm aware of the gift this person has brought into my life, even if it ends egregiously, that means that the love I shared with that person shall live within me forever, which actually means there's nothing to grieve because they were helping me reclaim a part of myself.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I love listening to you. I mean, I used to put me to sleep every single night. And
it's my goal. I want to put everyone to sleep. I'm just kidding.
No, but I would listen and take all this stuff in and just like kind of drift off. And I did that for like months at a time, listening to your I think you did like, was it once a week talks? Or was it on your
once a month? I'm getting back to that, by the way. We're going back to YouTube. So
good. Come back, because I was missing that, because you would just drop in, bring in the transmission, and it was like going deep in me that I was like, and you're not offended that you put me to sleep.
No, I'm just honored to serve you and everyone else. And sometimes the rational mind needs to be put to sleep in order for the subconscious to drink in the greater energy. So for me, and my father once came to see me talk, and in the first 5 minutes he passed out snoring, because my dad's only sense of relaxation is being sound asleep. So I was looking at him going, well, that's how he's going to get that information in there. So wonderful. So again, as a healer, my job is just to serve and transmit, and however it's received, I'm truly honored.
Yeah, no, and it was great. No, and of course I was awake a lot for your transmissions because they are transmissions. It's like when you don't know what's going to come through, and suddenly whatever you want to call that spirit starts to. Is that still happening? Are you still getting downloads, transmissions?
I've never stopped doing transmissions. Even for the only difference in YouTube was I wasn't doing in front of a live audience. And when I'm in front of a live audience, I'm a lot funnier. And when I'm just looking into a screen, it's a lot more direct and intense. But I am a living transmission of healing energy. And I've done transmissions from home through the pandemic. I've been on social media every day to offer support and continue to offer my offerings. The only difference is, as the world opens up, I get to do in-person events. And so then we get the longer format YouTube videos each month again. But yeah, I'm still embodying heart-centered consciousness, putting people to sleep. And Alan, honestly, the only one who can't pass out is me.
It's so funny. I appreciate that. And you could do live stuff to a YouTube audience. Actually, this is live for,
of course.
And I want to say Matt will be in Sedona March 17th to the 19th. That's Susan Ross's Sedona Ascension retreats.
Yes.
Which has a great cast of people, you and Paul Selleck and William Henry and Billy Carson, George Norrie. Have you been on George Norrie's show at all?
I think we've been like ships in the night. I don't think we've intersected quite yet, but one of these days, I'm sure George and I will talk, and I would always welcome that. So,
I'll mention you too. I'm going to be on the show on November 15th. I'll mention they're looking for people, and and he's a heart-centered guy. So how does like this idea of love,
Yeah.
maybe it's a ridiculous question, connect to our spiritual evolution? Maybe it is our spiritual evolution, but there's what I'm implying about spirituality is this ability to disconnect from the dramas, and maybe it's still feeling, but it's not being caught up even in that, oh, that person has helped me. It's like dropping to a place beyond that. Does that make sense?
It does, but it's the opposite of what I would, how I guide, because I don't want people to pull out for a bigger quantum view, although I understand why that can be helpful. What I like to do is to say that what actually alleviates the pain is when we actually get closer to our experience. And so it's the pulling away that actually, if you think of it like a hurricane, I know I send loving blessings to all of our friends in Florida right now as they await a possible hurricane. But in the center of a hurricane, the eye, we have complete stillness and peace. Around the outsides, we have the velocity of energy that can tear things apart. And so when we are pulling back, we are actually putting ourselves in the greatest space of danger if the hurricane is the metaphor. If we lean in, the thought is the more I lean in, the more ferociously I'll be damaged. The truth is, the more we lean in, the more we actually find spaciousness, peace, and perspective. And so what I have found, even in my life, if I just talk about my human life, when I was with my family and I felt like, I had this very confusing experience of being this empathic healer in the beginning of my journey. And then I'd go hang out with my family and get triggered on the inside. And I can serve all these people and I still get triggered by my family. What I found was the moment that I got triggered was the moment I decided to stop being helpful. And when I decided that no matter the attitude of people around me, because I began to love myself so deeply that their words towards me was just more of a recognition of their pain instead of an attack on my ego. And the more I chose to be helpful for whatever time I could stand being there, I would say, hey, I could stay here for an hour. And for that hour, I will be helpful and I will see other people's attitudes and perspectives as trauma responses. And if I choose to be here, I will serve. And when I'm done serving, I will remove myself for self-care. And what I found is that being emotionally triggered was the moment my ego would choose to stop being helpful. And because I value how good it feels to help and serve, I found that my ability to care for others, in spite of the differences in our perspectives and attitudes, allowed myself to be completely emotionally free, even in the presence of people's unconscious behavior, and even as an empath who can feel what they may not be feeling at a deep level. So it was pretty radical.
No, that's great training. Jesus said you're never a prophet in your own town.
That's hilarious.
That's what he said. I mean, somewhere, I think the Gospel of Thomas or something. But so there's this human condition.
Yes.
And we're in this world of relationships and working and making money, all that. And then there's this other level of being that we're really here for.
That's right. And I believe that the mastery and integration and embodiment of spiritual mastery is not someone who has glimpsed oneness, although that's a wonderful milestone. It's not someone who can speak about the moment the clouds parted, so many years ago. The question is, where are we right now? And the question is legitimately and authentically, what is it? And this is the inquiry we all have to do. It's not as cool as the esoteric meditate onto a light ship situation, but the real work at hand, especially right now, is what are the things that cause me to shut down in protection? What are the things that cause me to feel separate from other people? What are the things that cause me to say, when people treat me in a way that I think is unfair, I tend to retaliate instead of respond? And to really start looking at our hardwiring, to look at our system and say, okay, this person is being who they're being. I have an opportunity to take a deeper look at my inner landscape and really understand this system. And I think in the spiritual journey, we have been spending so much time for so many years trying to change and fix the system that we overlook the necessity of learning it. Once you learn the system, then we can start in training with it, harmonizing with it, and it will transform on its own. But I think some people, a lot of people, it's very common to be so preoccupied with changing themselves and fixing themselves that we're actually not getting to know ourselves. And so the reason I teach unconditional love, along with all the flavorings of awakening and multidimensional reality, is because really it's loving ourselves that helps us know ourselves. And once we know ourselves completely, we actually know others and can advocate for ourselves, but in a way that doesn't cause us to reflect other people's unconsciousness back to them.
No, I totally, yes, that is that's the journey of
Yeah.
here. But I am interested in the other levels of
Sure.
multidimensionality, and
Yeah.
that's been so shut down for us as well. So talk
Right.
about your experiences of multidimension and what that actually, how people use that word all the time. It's sort of like consciousness. No one knows what that means, but everyone uses it.
Right. Well, what's interesting is at a certain point, you can actually see I actually see the vibration of consciousness in myself and in all things. And you see this field of high vibrating particles, a field, and that we are all one as the field, but we're all unique as individuals. But just to share a multidimensional story, I've been told this story very often. So, and I have a lot of really otherworldly phenomenon. I actually experience it on a daily basis. It's just a normal part of my life. So I was teleported. And by that, I mean, it felt like I was having a lucid dream where my body was still in this moment, but I was projected onto what I saw was a light ship. And the funny thing about these experiences is that everything is just known in the higher dimensions. It's kind of like a dream where you go, oh, I'm here, and you don't question it. So I'm on a light ship in what's known as an interdimensional space, which means a dimension between dimensions. So it's silent. There's no movement. It feels very lucid. And because you're between time, it's very hard to remember, because usually we remember based on time. So I'm on this light ship, and I'm with the ascended masters and archangels who I know. And it's very surreal when you go from, oh, these are kind of conceptual archetypes, to, no, these are actually real beings. And I was face to face, like 5 to 10 feet away from Kuan Yin, right? And I go, oh, she's actually real. And she looks exactly as the statue entails, but she has bluish greenish skin. And I went, oh, she's a extraterrestrial princess. And she looks at me with these like almond shaped eyes, talking to me only telepathically. And all she does is she just kind of bows with the smallest of movements, just a slight head. And when she just gave me the slightest bow, every cell of my body erupted into a love I cannot even put into words. And what I realized was the higher you go in dimensional reality, the less love becomes a choice. I think part of the issue with why love is so difficult to embrace is because it's a choice. The higher you go dimensionally, love is not a choice. Love is the only reality, and love can be fierce and love can be forgiving. But when you encounter beings like this, there is no choice other than love. There is no consciousness or intelligence other than love and compassion. And so I think that in our training here on Earth, we first allow love to be an option. But what prevents us from being naturally aligned all the time is that love remains an option. We have to be so aligned with love and so intoxicated with our service of spirit that love is not an option. Love is the only necessity. And when we take any other option off the table, it is extraordinary how characters in your life will change and up-level to higher versions of themselves.
Thank you so much. That is a great story. Would you say love then is the baseline for these multidimensional realities? Like we have to get there first, and then these other adventures of spirit and consciousness start to improve. The problem is this is the training ground, right? This is the intense training we're in to get there. So, well then, what do you think is the first thing? I mean, I guess you said it. Look at your life, see where you're not loving,
Right.
and I wouldn't say force yourself, but what? That's the part I'm stuck in. Okay, not it's like, yeah, I want to love, but there's something that's in the way, and then what do you advise to get through that?
Well, I think it comes down to a very beautiful Zen teaching. What's in the way is the way. So here's how I teach. What's in the way is actually waiting to be loved. So the idea that I have to get this thing out of the way before I become loving is how we misunderstand loving for perfectionism. The thing that's in the way is waiting to be loved, whether it's a tumor in my body, whether it's the memory of how I was mistreated in childhood, whether it's jealousy at what happens in the world, or whether it's built up anger towards God, and all the different ways that people have experiences. So I think that part of the issue with the spiritual journey in the old paradigm is everything was so decompartmentalized. Whereas, people will say, I want to love myself, but fear is in the way. And my teaching is it's not love versus fear, because remember, that gives us two choices, not one. My teaching is love the one who's afraid. And the problem with that for most empaths is they say, but I don't want to feel afraid. But then we look at our feelings like a child in pain and say, if I was a parent and I had a child that was shaking in fear, would I say, I'd love to hold you, but I don't feel like feeling afraid right now? It's going to really lower my vibration. It's going to probably kill my manifestation. God's going to give my soulmate to my next door neighbor because you're going to lower my vibe. So sorry, I can't hold you, little child, right? We laugh because we go, that's awful. But if we look at our emotions like children, aren't we actually doing that sometimes innocently? And so what's in the way is the way. And the learning curve of love doesn't start simply. It starts with, okay, what's the first thing I love? How about the thing you can't want to get away from more? How about the thing that we've projected all our spiritual judgments on? How about all the things that we blame and talk judgmentally about with our spiritual friends? Oh God, this thing in me, my ego, this monkey mind, this whatever. Like, hi, look at the world. The world needs high vibrational beings to help usher in a higher consciousness. So it's time for us to legitimately say, I don't have to like how I feel. I don't have to like this process. This process sucks. And yet, the one that feels that way is here to be acknowledged, heard, and valued as an expression of divinity. And I don't withhold that honor for when it acts more appropriately, because it's that honor that transforms it back into light and offers it the healing and safety it desires. So we have to start thinking like parents, even if we haven't birthed children. We have to think of being parents to the heart of our inner child and embracing each feeling like a child in pain. That's the necessity right now.
That is a piece for me to remember.
Yes.
What's in the way is the way.
That's right.
And if I'm resisting or feeling or judging, well,
Yeah.
that's the opportunity. And what the thing about parents, I often feel like this body is our child. We have to
That's
know.
right.
And people who feed their child poison and mistreat it, don't put it to bed on time.
Yeah.
Well, they're abusing their children in a sense.
That's right. And when you were talking about early resistance and judgments, again, resistance can be seen as in the way of obedient spiritual behavior. Radically, I say, hey, if you want to call it resistance, it's the next thing to be loved. If you want to call it judgment, it's the next thing to be loved. But you're right. Like a child, when the child gets enough rest, when the child eats proper nutrition, when the child is loved and all of its emotional and physical needs are met, how does the child act? And so really, each and every one of us on a spiritual journey, above and beyond trying to fix, change, and maintain and micromanage whatever we're trying to do, Really, it's about establishing a culture within our own experience of ourself, meaning when you go to work at a company, there's a culture. The culture is the environment of our ethics. And so what I think is important as human beings is to say, what are the ethics that are being celebrated in how I relate to myself? And what kind of culture am I creating in my own mind? How do I speak to myself? How do I respond to myself? Because whatever my inner culture is the culture I project onto others when I leave my house. And how I treat others and what culture I create wherever I go becomes more of the inner culture and ethical value I embody. So I think what's really important is we have to establish what is the culture we want to contribute to the world. What kind of societal mean do we want to say is normal everyday life for the heaven on earth this planet's in the process of becoming? And what culture can I start to develop in my own inner reality so I know intentionally what I'm gifting to people as I move through the world? This is how we become consciously embodied, actualized beings who reclaim the power of our sovereignty and therefore can respect the sovereignty of others.
That is a great plan for action into the heaven we're becoming. But most people, and I don't want to judge anyone, of course, are not even aware that they're emptying culture, that they're talking to yourself, that they're being. I mean, I wish I could put you on the phone with my mother, you know?
I would love that.
It's like that joke, the waiter, you know, the joke about the waiter comes over a table of these older women and say, "Excuse me, ladies, is anything all right?" So it's like,
that's
like
funny.
That, you know, it's like, how do you make something, it's funny but true. But, you know, so there's people that, and I am judging, but I don't, I know, that's my issue, but I want to appreciate everything. And there's people that just don't for some, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to help them. I mean, you have any suggestions? Because it's so magical, the world. The leaves are turning color. How is that even possible? It goes from green to red to yellow.
Right.
I'm just looking up. Yeah, it's every moment can be magical. And yet people don't appreciate what's here. How can we reach those people? Not that they'll be watching this anyway, but how can we?
Yeah, if they're watching, they might be asleep right now. I would say that here's what I'll say. When I am playing the role that I play with you, right? I'm just transmitting when I'm at my events, when I'm doing my online court, all my work spiritually is to be who I am as this transmitter and embodiment of consciousness. Okay. Now in my personal life, here's where it gets interesting. Because I've tested all of this because you can't teach what you haven't learned. I have learned something very incredible over many years. In the very beginning of my spiritual career, I would enter into my family functions and I would think, I can see what these people need that would make so much happier. And gosh darn it, if I didn't perpetuate spiritual stereotypes to a T, like I don't know why these people don't like to be around me. Well, because they feel wrong on top of being upset and insufferable. So you've added to that apocalypse and called yourself a high vibrational being sprinkling stardust everywhere. So here's what I've learned. And I love it, by the way. I love spirituality, but at the same time,
I mean, the way you put it, it's absolutely true. And also very funny at the same time. Yeah.
Well, it's true because we have to, and the humor helps us to see through the veil of the mask. Right. So, okay. So I had some very radical intuitions that would invite me to try things like social experiments, because I would go to see my family and I would get triggered. I'd walk in, mommy, daddy, namaste, very like stoic and like holding myself, clenching, right. And then like an hour later, 3, 2, 1, and just on the inside, no one would know, but just go back to being a 12-year-old. So what I learned is that if anyone in my life on a personal level needs to know anything that I know, if they have space and room for the files of my wisdom, they will let me know by asking a question. And what I learned to do is I learned to see that everyone is having exactly the experience they need. I can support by encouraging and offering companionship and compassion, I can allow them to be seen, them to be heard, without reflecting to them how they've broken how many spiritual rules in one sentence. And I can actually just support someone's experience, knowing that the more harmoniously I connect with someone, the more consciousness I'm bringing into the moment. The more consciousness I bring into the moment, the more they have the right to see what they need to see, and they own it as their realization. So what I had to realize is that it was my growing edge. The beginning, the surface was, I'm an empathic healer and I want to help everyone transform. That's true. The truth was deeper. I don't like feeling how awful their suffering is, and I want to free them to spare myself. And I had to start looking at them as teachers to me instead of being preoccupied with what I could teach them. And that opened up a level of humility in me that is so invincible. And I would be with family members who would say things. They would be judging. They thought they were just they were just thinking out loud. No, just trying to figure out, just all these things. And I remember when I genuinely just treated their experience as being equally valid and important to them, including when they would judge someone. I wouldn't agree with them. I would say, I really hear how you feel, and I really thank you for sharing these deep feelings with me. And then they say, these aren't deep feelings. Oh, well, they're not deep feelings. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing not deep feelings with me, whatever the hell we need to say. And I learned, like, Aikido, which is a martial arts about moving with the flow of life. And I learned to flow with the current of every wave. And if I didn't correct someone, but just came with a soothing, complementary level of companionship and compassion for them, I was showing them the attention that their past withheld from them, and their consciousness would naturally expand, because every human being knows how to do what's right when they're not in a state of duress. So I serve the survival and the duress and fear people are in, and it's the companionship and connection that I offer people that lets them wake up instead of needing them to see how awake I am. And that is what love teaches us. And that's when we get into what I call authentic, embodied spirituality.
Right. We go out of the spiritual ego. Look how enlightened, look at all the books I've read and all the workshops I've done, and just be there with people.
Right.
But I think, that helps me actually as I approach the holidays with my family. And
it's the best, honestly, because here's the thing. What you start to see is, okay, whether we've realized it or we've glimpsed it or we've heard it, we know as spiritual beings, all is one, and we are all divine beings on our own journey of realization and refinement and embodiment. But when you see another person like your mom and go, look at how the divine is being right now. Look at God dressed up as this ridiculous character, going out of their way to put me in a position to refine my mastery, that if I start to get on to what the game actually is, I'm actually going to help them heal radically while focusing on how this is actually helping me to allow everyone to be as they are. Now, of course, if someone's abusing you, we have to give feedback and advocate for ourselves. So this is never an excuse to be an accessory to the crimes people, project upon us.
You need that self-respect as well as
we do
selflessness. But
yeah. I mean, I even said to family members, like, hey, I'm not sure if this is your intention, but the way you're speaking to me feels harsh on my heart. And if we can just talk in a more gentle way, that would actually allow me to really hear you. And I learned how to kind of give feedback. And I think part of it, and I think this is, again, an incredible thing for especially spiritual beings, is that sometimes we get so into a spiritual ego. We want to be seen for our talents. We want to be recognized for our purpose. We want to serve a great role in the world. But sometimes we forget to be humble. And humble is if I give someone feedback that they're mistreating me, there's two ways we can give it. We can say, I don't like the way you're talking to me. Now, for the people who will take that reflection and shift immediately, you'll never have to have a conversation like that. Right. But you can say that, and it's going to create a lot of standoffishness, and it's going to remind people of moments in the past where they were singled out, isolated, and perhaps mistreated. And then they're going to start speaking to you from that subconscious replay. Or we can say, hi, the way you're talking to me is harming my system. This is about my growth. This is about my truth. And if you can help me, that would allow me to fully be here and honor you. And so it's the feedback that really gets to people, even if you're talking to the most unconscious people. It's reminding them how they can help you with what you're struggling with. And if they refuse, we say, well, if you can't help me, I have to help myself and I have to go. It's been a pleasure. And so it's a very powerful way to talk when we humble ourselves instead of trying to humble others.
Well, I think what you're saying is also reminds me of Marshall Rosenberg's work in nonviolent communication.
That's right.
You can't blame anyone for what they're doing, but when you say that to me, I feel this.
Yes.
And if they're open to how you feel because they're talking to you and maybe care about you, then they say, oh, that wasn't my intention to make you feel that way. I was just saying, although I do want to tell you a funny story. It's my birthday years ago. And, I'm just getting up and I'm feeling really good. I'm doing projects I love and, things like that. I get a call from my mother and she says, happy birthday. Sorry, I did such an awful job. I'm feeling good about myself. And she's saying, oh, she didn't. And I said, no, I'm good. But it was just like such a shock there. It's like, anyway, I still have some little more work to do in that area, but I am like, seeing that everyone is where they're at because
that's right.
And that's where they really want to be. And no one's ready to listen until they're ready to change something in their life. I mean,
and by the way, I can give you another story that kind of reflects what you said. And I love the story you just said. Once my mom, because a lot of my training was with my mom and I love my mom, but she when she was triggered, it became a bag of tricks. And it was the greatest training ground for the work I did. Although I look back at my childhood and I go, some of that was borderline illegal for real. But like, I remember once talking to my mom and she goes, I'm sorry for not being as good of a mom as I could have been to you.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, well, thank you for letting me know. And this was interesting. I said that to her, total straight face. And I just looked at her and she's looking at me. And I said, Mom, it's okay if you tell me that you miss me and you just need a hug. Because that was what was underneath it. It was her trying to make herself less than, because that's the only way for her to tune, or when she feels vulnerable, it's in experiences of low self-esteem. And so oftentimes when we learn how to communicate, and again, I love Marshall's work. I have not studied it because I download everything from the universe, but there's one quantum field. But when someone says that to us, right, the inner rescuer in us wants to change their perception. No, you're a great parent, because we want to give them a better experience because we want to feel better. But what happens when we actually meet the moment as it is? Like, I was, hey, happy birthday, Ellen. Sorry, I was a terrible mom. Hey, Mom, thanks for noticing. Totally appreciate it. And then see what happens. It's fascinating because people wake up out of their own misperceptions if we can meet the moment with harmony. And again, it's not an overnight thing. The question is, how much love do we have to give ourselves to begin seeing from this perspective, instead of only recognizing it in hindsight when we feel so bad about the way we reacted versus responding? So how much love do I have to give myself to see through the insanity that is so clearly here to be seen through? And again, that's why love is the cornerstone of all higher dimensional realities. The higher you go, the less of an option it is. And again, that's why love is the most powerful force in existence.
No, I agree. And these are all great lessons. And,
Yeah.
Ram Dass says, if you think you're enlightened, spend a week with your family, so.
It's a classic quote and it's never untrue. And it's one of those things. And when people trigger us, I don't experience that in my life as much anymore. And if I did, it wouldn't make late breaking news. Like, I'm not going to text you, Alan, and go, Alan, I finally got triggered. Holy crap, I got triggered.
You text me when that happens.
I know, like, Alan, I got triggered. Oh my God, help me. But really, like, when we get triggered, it becomes wow, thank you for reacquainting me with a part of myself that I didn't realize was next in line to be loved. Thank you for showing me where one of my most fragile inner children hides. Thank you for showing me where more love can go into me. And as I love myself through the law of oneness, I'm loving you and everyone in existence. So here's the funny thing, Alan. It's either that we are all the divine, having this insufferable experience of learning how to evolve in the most ridiculous, passive-aggressive way. Or when we're triggered by other people, it's because the quantum field collectively is begging for love to uplift the vibration. And our individual experience is actually just our contribution to the whole. And the play of this person did this to me or vice versa is just the individual egoic way in which we serve and respond to the collective as we awaken. And so what I really think is a fascinating revelation, the more you wake up, the more you realize everything you're doing for yourself, you're doing for the whole. And so when someone triggers you or you love yourself, it's not that you failed your test. It's that humanity is needing more love. And this is how life got your attention. And at a certain point of evolution, your guides can say, send some love to the collective without your mom acting like a ridiculous character. But that's the way we grow.
Yeah, no, that is good. And, it takes a lot of baseline work. You have to really be in the trenches there to get to that level. One thing Marshall Rosenberg says that I never forgot was instead of complaining about something, say, how can life be more wonderful? So that's the thing. But I want to also ask you about, you talked about heaven and earth, and we're trying to create this, and we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be going to Ascension retreats and being on light tips if we didn't think there was a possibility that we can create this. But are we kidding ourselves? I'm not serious about that, but do you see really happening that we can do this?
Yes. And here's why. So in a human being who has never had a spiritual inkling in their life can somehow at a certain moment begin cracking open, asking, almost as if there's a gravitational field that no matter how insufferable a moment is, there's a force of consciousness pulling us forward. There's a force of gravity pulling us into expansion. The reason that is because the future of how this all has already unfolded has already occurred and in infinite multidimensional variations. So the reason the gravity pulls us through the present towards a future reality is because we're being ushered along with the free will that says, hey, take whatever path you decide, but just know the gravity of what is the future has already unfolded. You're finding your own way towards a reality that has already occurred. So the ascension of humanity isn't, from my perspective, can we do this? The question is, what timeline are we choosing collectively, and how gracefully, miraculously, or insufferably will we glide into ascension or stumble through the doors of heaven? And we are, as we evolve and wake up collectively, individually, we are helping humanity choose the most elegant, direct path to a reality that has already occurred, that we are living out like a movie while deciding individually and collectively, not what happens, but the type of movie we're watching and living out.
So then how does that, so we just have to keep doing what I'm doing, one I love you at a time, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, with the caveat being that yes, we do the I love yous, but in every moment, just as love can be different, right? Love can be the ecstasy we feel in the arms of a beloved. Love can be a parent welcoming a child into the planet for the first time. Love can be the fierceness of a mother pulling her toddler out of oncoming traffic. So love is always very unique, and in every moment, we have to ask ourselves, what is the frequency of love that I need right now? Maybe it's an I love you. Maybe the word I love you was said by a person from your past who said loving things but did dastardly things. Maybe you got love from a parent who passed away and that inner child internalized that as being abandoned. So there's a lot of energy around love. It might be, I need to hear, I like you. It might be, I don't love you, but I would love to learn how. I mean, we have to actually be, so I think that the tendency is to try to get into a defined static structure. And what I like to help people do is to interact with life in every moment. We don't know what the moment calls for. We don't know what we need. And so we have to be able to ask questions of ourselves. What do I need right now? What are the words I haven't heard? What are the needs I can fulfill instead of projecting it onto others? And as we learn to do this, we learn to be flexible and adaptable in the presence of other people. So yes, it's love, but there's a dynamic quality that love is always expressing itself uniquely for the moments we're in. And that requires intuition, a thinking mind. It requires humility and readiness, which is why the cornerstone of the spiritual journey is not to get rid of your ego, but to integrate it.
Yeah. But okay, so what does it look like when like we do have the heaven on earth? Like
Yes,
at some point this will happen. Of course,
yes,
everyone has but I mean, you're sort of living in parts of that. You're a foot in that
yes.
world. What does it look like for the whole world to be that way?
What it looks like for the world is interdependence, cooperation. It looks like greater avenues of distribution because, you know, quite honestly, we have a lot of people with very little, and we have very few people who have a lot. And really, from my perspective, a lot of the problems of the world, violence is based on what occurs in neighborhoods when people don't have access to having their needs met or opportunities. And so when we learn to kind of spread around resources and opportunities, you know, we are going to live in a world where everyone is able to thrive and shine, and everyone is able to share their gifts. And really, what it would look like is that the world becomes not a sphere of many continents, but one global village. That's what it would look like. One global village.
That is our dream. That is our, I mean, it seems like things are accelerating. What do you say about this rate of ascension we're in? Because
yeah, you know, I would call this period of time the end, not the end, but the end of denial. And I would say that it's only Armageddon for the parts of our egos that are not being integrated. And that really what we're all facing, what looks like the world is crumbling, is actually just facing what's been denied and swept under the rug for many generations. And we are, you know, and when I talk about this, I was told by the Ascended Masters a very intriguing formula. And the formula is absorption foreshadows transcendence. So before we can transcend individually and collectively, we have to be absorbed in conditions. So we saw this with George Floyd and the chance to revisit the heartbreaking reality of systemic racism. We're seeing that in terms of having statues and monuments in colleges being replaced and team names being renamed so that we are not marginalizing cultures and races. And we're seeing how the divine feminine has been ostracized and marginalized in countless ways, including present day. You know, the disparity in how people earn a living and the money they can make. So and we also will reach a point in our evolution as a world where we are not identified necessarily with nouns. We are more like embodied verbs. We are spirit in action. And so we're seeing a lot of emphasis be put on pronouns, which is how we are kind of moving from absorption to transcendence. And it really is just a way to bring consciousness to the conversations that have been denied for so long. So if we understand the scary, overwhelming waves of life is the absorption part, and as we feel the pressure of what is erupting in us, and as we learn to meet it compassionately and lovingly, we individually and collectively begin moving from absorption to transcendence. Most people try to run to transcendence, but transcendence is what happens when we face the absorption that is here, asking us to look at and love what has been ignored for far too long. And so this is where we're at in history.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that and feel you. But is there a way? Do you see something like a light? I mean, like actually a physical shift in the vibrational field of reality that will be visible to all? Yeah.
Yes, but we can't wait for the days of waiting for an external prophecy to rescue us is what keeps us taking responsibility for our own light in this moment. So if everyone watching this video were to say there is a light coming, and it is the one I am the light that is emerging. I am that which all beings seek, not someone seeking something from anything else. When each of us decide to say, I will be that light, I am the light, and I will become the light that I am. When each of us say that, right? Well, they say it takes one being to go all the way to wake up an entire planet. But here's the caveat. When a large population of the planet all decide to be that one together, that's when the shift occurs. So we can't wait for something higher or other. We have to say there is a light of ascension coming, and I am that light as I am now, with my triggers, without my triggers, with my warts, with my blemishes, with my parents, with all of it. I am that light right now because the world needs light. And I know that that light is within me, not outside of me. So each of us are the living announcers of that prophecy, and love is what gets us there.
That was a transmission that sent chills through me, and that's the map for that. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the inner mantra of knowing, and I don't want to keep you too long. I just want to show people. Okay.
Oh yeah, great. I'm just honoring you, and I thank you, and I really appreciate this.
Yeah, me too. And this is what Matt and a bunch of people who know they're the light, who are keeping the light, as are going to be a part of, and it's a great cast of characters. Let's say Sedona Ascension retreats. Billy Carson, Paul Selig, who's fantastic. Have you read some of Paul's work?
I don't read books because I don't want to be influenced by anyone's language patterns, but I know Paul and I've seen him, I've met him personally. I think he's a wonderful person. And, really, it's always quite an honor. I don't get a chance to meet a lot of their fellow authors. So when I go to events like this, it's really a chance for me to experience other people's work. Paul knows me, I know Paul, and, the chance to, I mean, if we look at all these people, really, who's the one? The Alan Steinfeld. I mean, this guy, I can't wait to meet this guy. I give him a hug in person, but really it's William Henry. It's really an honor to be able to share space with so many beautiful light workers when we all have the intention of really serving our world at this time.
I also have to say JJ and Desiree Hertog are, their work.
Oh yeah. Well, I know of them. I know of people's works. I literally don't read or tune into a lot of things because I want to, as a channel of the universe, I always want to keep my transmission as pure as possible. And I always want it to be worded in the way that I word things. So for me, it's a very specific process, but I know of these authors. I know of the great work they do. And I know JJ, and they've been doing such great work for so many years. And I honor so many people who have come before me to set the stage for what I'm here to bring to the world, just as I am creating a path for others. And again, what an honor to come to this event, to be able to connect with you, and to be able to serve this world at this time when really, if we really think about what's happening, we live in a world that has gotten very comfortable and even soothed by identifying with unconsciousness. We have to now shift into a conscious reality and recreate our society from the fabric of consciousness, and to know all of the beings that are stepping forward to help and to serve on so many levels. It's truly humbling, and it's a true honor. And it's there's so many good things happening. It's just easy to be distracted to the loudest noises that our insufferable parts will make as they're being transmuted and reborn as light.
Right. That's what makes it so exciting too. If it was just all over at the beginning of the movie, they live after, there wouldn't be any intensity to creation. So we are working through the levels and levels, and I appreciate your purity and wanting to stay in your own space. And I think that's you being the light in that way, because well, Matt, talk about this latest book that you have out too, you said?
My latest book is called All for Love, The Transformative Power of Holding Space. And it's literally how to learn how to communicate and how to connect with others without needing to find a common ground, without needing to change someone's experience. So for those that hear this and go, that sounds great, how do I do that? I wrote a book to be like an owner's manual of how we communicate consciously in an emerging 5D reality, and how to interact with people who are not quite there. And in addition to that, my team and I just created a new online course called Heal to Completion. It's shot in HD. We thought it was going to be one thing. Of course, Spirit had different plans. And I brought through, honest to God, one of the most incredible online courses that's literally like people being able to have like an individual one-on-one retreat with me. And, you can find out details about my new book and this course at mattkahn.org.
Heal to completion being the completion of what are we actually completing here?
Well, it's interesting because when you think of heal to completion, my intention is to help people move out of perpetual healing cycles. But in every moment, there is a new level of completion that a moment is bringing to us. So when we're healed to completion, we are not only just in tune with our wholeness, even if the body still has symptomology, but in every moment we are growing, expanding, and evolving from one moment of completion or mastery to the next highest completion and mastery. And so really the course helps you not only to accelerate your healing journey, but how you can be fully aware of all the gifts of evolution and expansion that every moment gives us to go from one moment of completion to the next. So it's a very beautiful dance, and it's one of the most incredible things I've ever channeled.
And are there things you're still awakening to? I mean, is your process ongoing? I mean, I suppose it is. I mean,
of course.
But
I would say for me, my journey is about integration. I still have very big experiences on a daily basis. But for me, like, for example, I was raised in a family, and not to blame my family. My family's wonderful, but I was raised in a family where
blame somebody. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I can, but I was raised in a family where the culture, the ethical value is that health was something that we do, eating healthy, when a doctor scares us with a prognosis or test results. And so I was raised in a family where food was a reward, food was entertainment. And I was never taught that food was medicine. And there have been times in my life where I've gone into really healthy regimens. And then there have been times where I've really gone out of that. And for me, I've noticed that one of the ways that I can assist my family in healing, helping my parents evolve even in heaven, is to do the very thing that I never was exposed to in my life, which is being consistently healthy. Now, for me, I was born I had a double hernia surgery a day after I was born. So my upbringing was, my earliest identification was actually being unwell. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I had glimpses of feeling well, to the point that it would overwhelm me, because my whole operating system was, I lean on my energetic field to compensate for my sick physical body. Without a body being sick, there's nothing to overcompensate for. And I would feel intimidated by how good I would feel being healthy, and I would go out of it. And I will say that right now, it is my spiritual practice every day to honor my body with health and wellness. I've learned what works for me digestively. I've learned what doesn't. The way I was raised to eat is not what works for my body anymore. And each and every one of us have to find that edge. And for me, what's different is that my commitment to health is not a vacation I take. It's not a summer home I have in alkalinity. It's actually now a living daily process where I don't fantasize about a day off. I only fantasize about how incredible I feel eating food, healthy food, that I have the ability to make very delicious, because in addition to being who I am, I'm also Matt Kahn's private chef. So,
oh, love to be. Well, that is something I also worked on, and I knew sugar wasn't good for me. And I decided I just didn't like the taste of sugar. If I tasted something really sweet, it said that, and you can train your senses, it still tastes like sweet, but the identification of, oh, that sweetness is something I like or makes me feel good, shifted. And I stopped eating junk food and bread. Coca-Cola and pizza was an incredible combination, but I can't eat pizza or sugar or dairy. It's tomato sauce with sugar and so it was a shift in consciousness, and that's part of the journey, I think, is nourishing the child, the body. And thank you for that little bit.
Well, and just as an aside to that, I will just say that what I've had to learn in health and really longevity is, in the beginning, I was trying to recreate my old lifestyle with healthy eating. And what I realized is I actually have to abandon my old lifestyle and actually create a new culture. And so for me, what helped me really stick to and commit to this was, instead of trying to recreate my old life in a new eating regimen, I just completely said goodbye to my old life and hello to a brand new reality. And for me, that is what has helped me to truly see every meal I eat as a chance for me to vote for my highest spiritual practice.
Because you did say a while back that you were a foodie. I remember hearing you say that.
Still am. And, I will just say that there are things that I was raised to eat that I have loved that my body won't tolerate anymore. And so I just have to listen to my body. I eat an incredible amount of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. I make everything from scratch. And for me, I feel very honored and privileged to be able to have the ability to eat the way I eat. And every time I eat a meal, my intention is that when I'm eating, I am blessing all neighborhoods and villages and cities and continents to have access and have available to them the level of clean food that I am honored to be able to eat and digest. And so my greatest honor is to treat my body so well that I energetically magnify the ability for other people to discover how incredible it is to feel well by nourishing our body when food is medicine and not a form of emotional support. It's very important.
No, it's great. I really appreciate that. And I know I'm doing that too. And I feel so much better.
Yeah.
It's like, you didn't know why I was tired or sluggish or then you just stopped eating bread for one thing. And like, wow, but what?
I was agreeing with you. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, but I just enjoy hanging out with you. I'll come over for dinner one day. Are you in the Northwest still?
Still in the Northwest, excited to come to Arizona to be a part of the event we're doing. And just loving the Northwest. It's the fall. It's feeling more like winter, but for me to just be at home, enjoy the rainy, blustery weather, and to cook and to just create, and to know that I am helping to energetically nourish the planet and reverse hunger. by how grateful I am to eat the foods I'm able to eat. And for me, it's also a part of art, because as a conscious being, we have to also be in tune with our inner artist, because we need art to balance the spiritual ego, and we need consciousness to awaken our inner artist. So they really go together.
I agree. I think we're here actually to be creators, to be the artists.
Absolutely.
And that is the purpose for incarnation.
Absolutely.
And that is is for me what the promise of this planet awakening is all about. It's the flowering of humanity when we all realize that we are the creators and we're here to emulate creation as
Absolutely.
creators.
Well said.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for your time and your humor. No, that's
pleasure.
it's the best part, just to sit back and laugh and see the drama, but see the comedy in the drama, right?
Laugh until you cry, cry until you laugh. But again, only when it arises authentically. And it's, again, many blessings of compassion for all beings. I offer love to every heart, and it's my honor to serve this world.
And you're going to start your YouTube channel again, because I miss.
Well, it's never stopped. It's just that we haven't had videos from live events, and that's when I'm funnier.
All right.
So we'll now do more live events, and absolutely, but we will continue on YouTube. And it's an honor, Ellen. I love you.
Thank you again. One I love you at a time. Thank you, Matt.
It's an honor, sir. I love it.
What's that?
I said it's an honor.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you so much. All right. I'll see you in March in Sedona.
I'll see you.
Yes.
And everyone else.
Thank you, everyone in the chat. We got some great responses on the chat. I can't believe how everything is resonating with me. Yes, your voice, Mr. Kahn, is most definitely calming and soothing. Fabuloso, spiritualism at its brightest. This is some nice little blurbs. All right, I'll be in touch. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more of this. See you soon. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. Look for Matt in Sedona Ascension Retreats. Be there March 17th to the 19th, 2023. I'm Ellen Steinfeld. And my new book, I'll give you a copy of my book. Have you seen that?
Oh, I'd love to. Absolutely.
That you might read, because I think it's a whole other.
I'll just feel it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Talk to you. Thanks a lot.